Please give it up for Steve England.
It's just the right time for listening.
1261, the Steve England Show on Piccadilly Radio.
I didn't know anybody still had that tune. Well, good evening. Already it's not good evening because I'm here. Okay, well, I didn't really know what to do tonight, so what I thought the easiest thing to do was kind of give you a little bit of a life story in relation to jingles, take you through it, how I got interested and so on, and how I got into the business, a bit like the, inmates taking over the asylum, which is what we've done, or that's at least ways what John Wolfert thinks he's done, and I think I've done, and Ken Justice to a certain extent. Just one thing, really, the past is, it's very weird looking at the past from today. You get a very distorted view. It's a bit like we're looking at an old movie, an old Marx Brothers movie or something, and it looks very weird, and some of the stuff I'm going to be playing is 40 years old. So if it looks strange and weird and sounds strange and weird from this perspective of 2006, just bear with me. I would say that I guess I don't have to say this to a lot of you, but I would say to the younger ones to encourage you to get interested in the history of all this stuff, because it's really, really interesting. So not just what's on the air now, what was on the air when you were growing up, but what was on the air before then? How did this all start and so on? We'll be meandering in all sorts of areas related to that today. But the first thing I was going to tell you was really how I got interested at all in radio. I walked into my cousin's bedroom and I said to him, "What are you listening to on the radio? Is it Luxembourg?" And he said, "No, it's a ship that's going round, sailing round Britain, broadcasting." I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting." We sat and we listened for a while. And the following week I went into his room again and said, "Can we listen to that ship that's... Oh, it's gone. It's up at the Isle of Man now." But it got me interested in radio, and I started tuning around and picked up Radio Caroline North, as it was up here. But the one that really started the whole interest in jingles, and I come from the same background as all you guys, because I was a collector, was Radio London. Radio London was a ship that was financed from Texas. Most of the people who were involved in it from the American side were Texans, and so by this amazing luck, PAMS, the original jingle company, was in Dallas. And so the original program controller of that radio station was a guy called Ben Toney, and when they heard of this project to set up a radio station off the English coast, that heard about Radio Caroline, he went to PAMS and recorded the very first jingles. We should have a picture, I think, of Radio London somewhere here. Are we having a little bit of problems with that? Oh, that's it. An old minesweeper. Everything was done on the cheap, but this station, a lot of you I know will know about it, but it was the most successful radio station of the 1960s. Audience of 20 million. And that's like Radio 1 when it had, at its height of its listenership, from this little ship here. Hugely successful. And the first time I picked it up on my dad's radiogram, we're going to play the CD track number 1 now. I heard these weird little songs. Not only was the presentation very good as well, because in those days you heard from the BBC, "This is the BBC, and you pay attention when you're listening." And on these radio stations they say, "Hey, hi, here's Unit 4+2, number 27 in the Fabulous 40, and hey, yeah, that record's going to go places, probably over the side if I don't like it." They were a very informal form of presentation. So I'll play you some of the jingles that I heard originally on Radio London.
This is wonderful Radio London, where you're hearing things, where you're hearing things. Wonderful.
lot of you will know these jingles. Of course, it's Series 18 from Pam's, one of the most successful, one of the biggest sellers that Pam's ever had. Now, when I first heard that, you know, I'm a kid of about 12, and I'm thinking, what is that weird voice? And the only thing that I'd ever heard was on the radio, they talked about speech synthesis, and they had the first computer speech synthesis done. If you remember the film 2001, they do a little tribute to it where the computer sings Daisy Daisy. And I thought it was a singing computer, and I thought it was this, which is track number 2 on the CD.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer. Who? I'm crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage, but you look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two.
As I say, listening to it 40 years later, it sounds really weird because, you know, speech synthesis is every day and we know about it. That was the first. That was the first. And that's the only thing I could compare it to. I didn't know what that weird electronic voice was. We all know it's not Sonovox now, or at least most of us will know that, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that later on. The next thing that happened was, by magic, my father moved to Kent, and Kent was, of course, where most of the pirate stations were off the Kent-Essex coast. The next really interesting thing that happened was another station came along. Again, it came from Texas, but it came with the same it came with the jingles from the same place, from Pam's, but it came with an idea of putting American radio on in England. They thought it would be a huge wow. For whatever reason, it wasn't financially managed very well. It was a bit early. You've got to remember, in those days, America was like Mars. It was like a million miles away. And so it came with a very, very strong American format. Had wonderful jingles that I hadn't heard before. Radio England. The first few I'm going to play you, I've restored these. So we're going to play that.
England's finest, swinging Radio England, where the music is news. You get a positive charge here on swinging Radio England. Swinging Radio England, where the action is.
That's another magical sound that probably a lot of you know. Glennie Rutherford, the very high girl singer, matching the brass. She was told, she asked one of the brass players, you know, how do you phrase things? Maybe I could kind of sing along with your phrasing. And that's how that whole thing occurred, that she learned from one of the trumpet players how to phrase with the brass, and she had this amazing voice that went up very high. She lived in London for a short time, actually, and this is, you know, I think in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, and she also works in Los Angeles, and her daughter is quite a good singer as well, famous session singer. By this time, you know, the thing is, you've got to remember, this is the days before the internet. There's no point in you going to the reference library to ask about this stuff. Nobody will know. Who can you ask? They don't know. The pure puzzle of it was amazing. I didn't even know where this stuff came from, but I knew it sounded unbelievable and sounded fantastic, and I was really interested in it. I had heard this jingle on Radio England. This is one of my unrestored versions.
Swinging Radio